How do we answer an atheist who says God cannot exist if he allows poor people to starve? Friends, welcome to Bible Words. I'm Pastor Dave, your host. Thanks for tuning in as we answer this challenging question, both about God's existence and the reason for our suffering world. The psalmist says that God's existence is affirmed by his creation. He proclaims the heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of his hands in Psalm 19. The Apostle Paul affirms the same in Romans 1. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, that is, his eternal power and divine nature, saying that God's existence is that of an all-powerful, infinite being, that has been clearly seen, being understood through what he has made. That is the overlapping, complex living systems of our world. So that they, all the God deniers, are without excuse. But of course, neither one of these Bible passages will answer our question, do they? That's because those folks who deny God's existence in their spiritual rebellion against God would deny this reality of a creator. So our question this week indicates that in observing the consequences of sin in our world, suffering, their logical conclusion is that it's God's fault, or sort of. I say sort of because in the attempt to disprove God's existence, they have made a most interesting theological assumption about God. They're assuming if there's a God, he must be good, and he would not allow suffering. Wow, that's quite an affirmation of God's divine image, having been wired into their DNA to assume that God is good, because he is. But their reason that any and all suffering experienced in the world of mankind must mean there's no God, because if there was a God, he would not allow anything bad to exist, of which the pain of starvation, of course, would be at the top of his list. This is not a new contemporary conclusion or way of thinking. It's been around for as long as sin has been a part of man's existence. 1000 BC, 3,000 years ago, Solomon made this observation of how sinful man reasons out the brokenness of our world. He says, "The foolishness of man ruins his way, and his heart rages against the Lord." Let me say that again. The foolishness of man ruins his way, and his heart rages against the Lord. So here's the questions. Do poor people in our world starve because God does not exist, or because a good God still allows evil to exist in our sinful, broken world? Proverbs claims the latter. It's evil people the problem. He says abundant food is in the fallow land of the poor, but it's swept away by injustice. See, the problem of starvation is not because the world God created can't produce enough food to provide everyone sustainable diets. Our text reminds us that abundant food potential is available in our world overall every year. In spite of certain places being affected by either drought or flood in any given year, the world is still very capable of producing food in abundance for its people, even 8 billion of us. It's not because God doesn't exist or has turned a blind eye to the plight of suffering humanity. What's the problem? The problem is not God being either bad or non-existent. The Creator God is good, and that's seen in the amazing world he's created and sustains. Sinful man is the problem. He is in constant conflict with his neighbor, nationally, locally, personally, and the destructive injustice of his warring attempts to gain control over more land, nation against nation, tribe against tribe, religion against religion, neighbor against neighbor, always ends badly for the meekest and the weakest in conflict. The weakest always end up hungry, driven into refugee camps, or hanging on to overgrazed lands, or unable to plant because their potential seed became a casualty of war. And when the cause of hunger is due to a drought or flood, and the world aid comes to that region, support the helpless, it usually ends up more in the pockets of the ruling tribe or political party than in the stomach of those who need it most. So we should answer our atheist friends by telling them that world starvation is not because of God's non-existence, but because of God's tolerance of sinful people who cause injustice that hurts the weak at every turn of life. And why does God tolerate such people? Well, two basic reasons. Overall, if God currently did not tolerate sinful people who do evil, world history would not have been possible, and none of us would ever existed, because we were all, without exception, sinful in his sight. As Romans says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. No, God tolerates evil so human history can exist, and more importantly, so God can complete his redemptive plan of saving sinful people as he invites them into his forever family. From every tribe, tongue, and nation in each succeeding generation of people of world history. This is the who and the why behind world starvation. for God to love sinful people along the way, he has to tolerate their sinful injustice toward others. Friends, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, share Bible words with your friends, and let me know if you have any further questions about this vital topic. We'll see you next week.